Tech Reimagined. Redefining the relationship between people and technology. Brought to you by Endava. This is Tech Reimagined.
Hello everyone, I'm Bradley Howard and I'm happy to welcome you back to our Tech Reimagined podcast. In season 1, we looked at how technology is reimagining the way that we live and work, from healthcare, payments and the future of work, to the role of AI and how we move people and goods and the gender gap in technology. Now in season 2, we'll aim to explore the big questions around technology and the industries that are impacting our lives.
Humankind has been gathering data since the Bronze Age. This is not new. 4,000 years ago, we're making records in stones and writing how people should sell straw baskets to each other in Mesopotamia. So data has been the fuel of everything.
I think AI and big data is not about, one or the other. It's how do humans learn to work with machines, and how do, machines make humans much more productive and hopefully at a faster rate. So this is a partnership, I think, between the humans and the machines. And we're getting back to the humans versus machines. And I think what we say is that artificial intelligence won't necessarily beat humans, but humans working with artificial intelligence will certainly outperform humans working alone. So it's that ability to harness both.
So the bigger picture is how we use data to forecast our costs over a longer term period. Because construction and building homes is a long-term activity, we have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan and 30-year plan, as you can imagine. Now we need to build into that the cost of investing in our existing homes, so that we don't just invest in new supply, that we also maintain the quality of the homes for our existing customers. And in order to do that, what the data tells us is the likelihood of when a component in a home is likely to fail. And then because we have 37,000 homes, that's a lot of components. So what we wouldn't want is everything to fail at once in one specific year, for example. So what the data allows us to do is draw out a plan for our existing homes of when we are going to replace various components and spread the cost of that over the longer term plan. And that allows us to see what money we then have to invest in our new homes. So data is really important part of that financial planning and understanding the homes and the performance of those homes.
I think that trend analysis and pulling out information is much, much better. You would think with all this power, business would be run better, but that's a different question. So I almost might make the case that some of this has become where data may be a god or goddess that we worship too much, and that in fact there is still a very powerful place for intuition and luck, quite frankly. So let's not get too data-driven. Let's get data-advised, if you will.
It turns out that if you use a powerful technology with no ethical grounding whatsoever, you often end up with a Frankenstein story. That is, the unintended consequences come back to bite you. And we've seen that, for example, in the untethered use of AI to optimize addiction on social media, which is causing enormous social harm. And we now the Frankenstein's out of the lab, and it's kind of hard to come back. So the better approach is to approach it with eyes open, especially ethical eyes.
AI is finally showing how useful, but how fundamental to our progress it can be when it is used for good.
I guess we're still at the latter end of what I call the Wild West phase in terms of this technology. And the position is compounded somewhat by the fact that we have a lot of very exciting startups that are looking for immediate return on the market and looking for investment. And that, I think, encourages less than precise decision making in terms of what the sources are that they use their, where they get their data from.
I genuinely think what has happened with the industry as a whole, from a financial services perspective, is that if you weren't online or you had a plan to be slow in getting online, that basically got brought forward. I think people are talking a couple of years. Personally, I think it's more like 5 to 10 years we've accelerated as a result of it. So what it has done is it has shifted strategies and priorities overnight to things that may have been more the next 3 to 5 years are now, we just need to be this way, because everybody jumped online because they had to, as the consumers did, and the consumers' expectations are is that, you know, everything needs to be available to you. So in order to meet that demand, and again, a lot of us try to be user-centered in what we design, these companies are just going to have to be digitally led first and foremost, and I don't think the genie ever goes back in the bottle there in terms of, you know, not being digitally focused. So I think it's accelerated things massively, and I think it's hard to see it going back.
I think that when we look back, the pandemic is going to be one of the biggest influences in technology and modernization and revolutionary change ever in the history of man. You know, you could make the case there was sort of the industrial revolution, you know, steam engine, electricity, et cetera, et cetera. Now, those are primarily positive, right? Those were empowering technologies. But I think the pandemic has forced such a reorientation of everybody's mind that it's going to create changes totally unforeseen.
What leaders do is they think big. You know, they create and they communicate a bold direction that inspires results. They think differently. They take risks. They challenge others to do the same. And they champion visionary ideas. And then they hire and develop the best. I think this is the most important and the most difficult aspect of leadership and management. You've got to be constantly on the lookout for talent. And they hire and develop visionaries who can execute, you know, great ideas brilliantly. So bring in people who's going to raise the performance bar with every hire. You know, people who will recognize, teach, coach exceptional talent.
What's been great, if one can say anything great about this pandemic, is that it has forced legacy companies, incumbent, lazy, big, slow-moving companies, to adopt digital in an intelligent, consumer-friendly way, because if they didn't, they were screwed. And banks and airlines have done a pretty good job.
I suppose it all boils down to sort of people, process, and technology, or tools in a broader sense. I think many of our tools these days are technology tools, but that's obviously can encompass a whole bunch of other things too. I suppose the way I tend to frame this is a bit less like what are the essentials and a bit more what have I never regretted investing in?
Technology affords us to make a choice that delivers more impact to our lives, better outcomes. But we have to exert that choice as human beings. And I think that's the piece that we're going to struggle with. We're now able to do so much more than we could do with our lives than, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. That's thanks to technology. But going forward, as always, it will be what we choose to do with the time that's saved that becomes most important.
The hardest challenge is the need to keep on reinventing yourself. The fact that the goalposts are constantly moving. And I think particularly if you've been a successful company, it's maybe overcoming that success bias, that the things that made you successful in the past are not necessarily the things that will make you successful in the future. And we think about wanting to retain the key bits that makes us who we are, our culture, but also realizing that we have to let go of some of the ways that we used to do things, because although they were absolutely right for the company the size we were, they just will start to hold us back and prevent us from going where we want to be in the future.
It's like looking at a swing or a seesaw. The extremes have us cantilevering on a fulcrum. I don't think that it is natural in nature to have complete stasis. It's not going to happen. As long as human beings continue to evolve and society continues to respond to our evolutions, we will always be in imbalance. And all growth requires imbalance and the uncertainty related to failure. We are not going to have gender parity the way we keep imagining it. We'll have moments of it. We will have outcomes that said men and women work together on an equal footing to produce a particular result. But I think it's just the nature of human beings to want to win to the point that we create loss for other people.
I think that's how you achieve the best change. When you've got the LGBTQ employee group reminding people that we need to have prayer rooms for the Muslim colleagues, and the Muslim colleagues being like, well, we need to make sure that our benefits are available to everyone. When people support and echo each other, then you can achieve a lot more than if you're all just individually trying to influence.
To all of our listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Tech Reimagined, and thank you for joining. Please show us some love, hit that like and subscribe button if you really like the episode. And please remember to tell your friends and colleagues all about the podcast. If you have any questions or you want to reach out, please drop us a line at endava.com or use the @Endava handle on pretty much all the social media platforms. We really look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, it's been a pleasure.
Tech Reimagined. Redefining the relationship between people and technology. Brought to you by Endava. This is Tech Reimagined.